This is Turnarounds, Cycles, and 2/5s Play Along by Jamie Aebersold. A few weeks ago, I made a lesson about another Aebersold when I talked about this one, 2/5/1 progression. And this is kind of a sequel to that, I guess. This is volume 16 of Aebersold's. The 2/5/1 chord progression we find all over the place in jazz and other styles of music as well. But we need to kind of prepare ourselves for improvising over this chord progression because it's gonna show up all the time. We need to master this harmonic movement if we want to be able to play jazz. There is another chord progression we need to study as well, which is the turnaround. We often find it at the end of a tune or a form, like 1, 6, 2, 5. Then there are many variations on this chord progression on different chord alterations that you can use and all this stuff. So in this book, or play along, or whatever you want to call it, we're gonna look at that. So let's get started, shall we? The first chord progression is a 1, 6, 2, 5 in every key, going up in half steps. So with no alterations, just diatonic chords, which means you can play just the major scale over the whole thing. So let me show you what that sounds like. So this is C major,
2, 3, 4.
A minor, D minor, G7. I can just play C major. And then it goes to D flat. D major. E flat. Right, so I'm just playing key centers. I'm not outlining each chord, which you could also do, but you don't have to. Then there is an example of an example of a written out solo that you could practice over this. It sounds like this. So I'm gonna try to read this for you here.
2, 3, 4.
And so on. He also suggests that you write your own solo. I think one of the things that we take away from this is that we can find out where our weak areas are. Let's say we get to G flat. G flat, E flat minor, A flat minor, D flat. And I'm noticing perhaps that, I'm not entirely sure where I am. Well, then you need to work on that. So then you could focus on that. And today, we don't really need these backing tracks. I talked about that in the previous video as well, that today we have loop pedals and we have iReal Pro, or most of you probably have some Logic or something where you can make your backing tracks yourself, and you can also change the tempo and all this stuff. You could easily make a backing track with this chord progression in the keys that you need to work on. The next cycle is the same thing, but all the chords are dominant. So F7, D7, G7, C7. Now all of a sudden we can't play really a key. You kind of can, but we need to consider every chord. And to help us do that, we have a whole page of different patterns that you can use. I'm gonna pick one. I played some of those in the beginning of the video. This is a easy one. So I'm starting on the third of F, and I hit the third of the D, the F sharp, and then I start on the root of the G and outline the C like that. So if I try to play that pattern over this backing track here, I think the cycles are moving in the cycle of fifths.
1, 2,
So first F,
4.
then we go to B flat, so a fourth. There it is. E flat, so I'm starting on the third, right? A flat. What's challenging here is you have to quickly be able to think what's the third of the next chord and all that, which I failed to do that in the second example. It's a good workout. Even if you're a seasoned or more advanced player, this is good. And I just picked the easiest pattern, or one of the easier. Let's take a little bit trickier pattern. Here is a little bit tricky. It's like very jazz, idiomatic. So obviously I'm not giving you all these patterns. That's not what these videos are about. I always say this, this is copyrighted material. I'm just showing you a little bit of what you can expect to get from this book. I would have liked to see more patterns like this. It's like one page of them. But you can use this in combination with other books if you have like the books by Randy Vincent that I've mentioned before in other videos. You could apply the material in those books to this and you have tons of stuff to work on. Let's try this pattern.
4.
I could play diatonically over this. I could play the major pentatonic. Right? When you see a chord progression like that, and you will see this all over the place in jazz standards, in American songbook type standards, it doesn't mean that you have to play every chord and outline every chord all the time. That would sound kind of silly if you did that. But you need to be able to do that. So that's why you need to practice that. But if you try to do it too much, you sound like a jazz student. A real musician will play over the changes sometimes. But if you never outline those chords, then your soloing is not very strong. It's kind of weak. And it's harder to outline those chords than to not do it. So that's why we need to work on this. But there's this trap that you can fall into where you think that you always have to play. No, that's not how that works. But again, you need to be able to do it. Especially make sure that you can do it in all the keys. But because if you're weak in certain keys, that's going to cause problems. And your soloing is not going to be strong if you have to kind of stop yourself every time there's a tricky chord progression coming up. Then there are other chord progressions like this one, C, E flat. I think it's called Tad Dameron turnaround because that's from a tune of his, Lady Bird. So instead of C, A, D, G, it's the tritone from each, or it could be dominant chords. Actually, I think it was a major chord. You could play. Let's try another one. So what a seasoned jazz musician would do is sometimes you can, as I said, outline those chords where there's a turnaround, or play kind of over it, just playing the key, or you can apply hint at some other turnaround that also works because they have the same kind of function. So I could play those chords even though they're not there, if you know what I mean. So if I play a regular tune, I could play the Ted Dameron turnaround, and a really good piano player would pick up on that. But even if they don't, it's gonna sound good because your playing is kind of going somewhere. It's like if you end up in the same place, it's gonna sound a little bit outside, but depending on how loose things are. So let's say I play, you know, All of Me. And if you play with traditional jazz musicians, they might not like that because it doesn't fit the style. But it can also be a really cool thing to do. It depends on the context. But anyway, so there's a whole bunch of patterns that fits those chords. And again, you could come up with your own. I suggest that you try to come up with your own. The next turnaround I really like, or chord progression, it's this one. Let's say you're in E flat, A split to D7 sharp 9, G minor to C7 sharp 9, F minor to B flat, E flat. So sharp 4 minus 7 5 5. This is also a chord progression you see all the time in jazz. So there, for example, and it's not really diatonic, so you need, again, material that you can use. I had a student who said, use the word ammunition. I like that. You need ammunition. So if I have this chord progression, A minus 7 5 5 to D, G minor, C, or maybe this. I like this one. There's There's one that sounds like Thelonious Monk. Very monk sounding. So let's try a few of those over the backing track.
3, 4.
That's E flat major. Now we go to B flat major. And now is F major. And C major. And then it moves through all the keys. And one thing you could do with this is decide, I'm gonna play this phrase. I'm gonna try to stay within a certain amount of frets and see if I can stay there. And just that's a good exercise. Let's see if I can do the tricky one.
1, 2.
So it starts on the 11.
3, 4.
There it is. Then there is a tune where you can practice this stuff. There's a tune called Hail Bop. It's one of Jamie Aebersold's own tunes that he came up with so that you can apply this stuff. Then we get into some cycles. Just a word on this. Some people don't like the idea of practicing on chord cycles like this. I remember some teachers I had, they never do that because the idea is that everything you play should be real music. Some teachers have this approach. Even if it's an exercise, it should be a tune. The idea there is that you're killing several birds with one stone. If you're practicing a chord progression like this, if you find a tune with the chord progression, you're actually learning a tune at the same time. But it can be kind of hard to find tunes that go through every key, and if you're going to practice every standard in every key, it takes forever. I don't mind practicing. I think it's good to focus in on this stuff, but I agree with the idea that when you teach, in the beginning when you teach, especially when you teach kids, everything you play should be a real piece of music. Some books, they could be for copyright reasons, but you know, if you're a teacher, sometimes you get a book for a beginner and it's like tunes like Hello Guitar or something like that, and it's just a stupid song that the author of the book came up with. But it's better to teach real music. That's why Bela Bartok wrote those piano pieces for beginners, but it's meant to have a high musical quality so that you could play it. Even a concert pianist could play those pieces because it's quality music. But if you already can play, but you're struggling with certain harmonic movements that you find in jazz, like the cycles like this, then absolutely focus in on cycles like this. So that's just my thoughts on that. Then we get into just practicing dominant chords moving in fourths. So for 2 bars, 1 bar, a half a bar each. And again, like today we can come up with your own backing tracks and do this better, but let's just see what it sounds like. So 2 bars each, dominant chords.
2, 1.
So C7
4.
and F. So you could practice your bob scales, for example. E flat, A flat. Now I'm trying to stay in one area. G flat, B, E, A. I'm just playing bob scales down, ascending, or descending. Or maybe arpeggios. So what I was doing there, I was playing the superimposed arpeggio from the third. So for the C7, I was playing E minus 7 flat 5 over a C7, which gives me the third, the fifth, the flat 7, and the ninth. I was trying to do that over all the chords. So let's see if I can do that when the chords are moving quicker. 1 bar per chord. 1 bar each.
1, 2.
So E minus 7 flat 5 arpeggio.
4.
A. Then G flat major. Here is G flat dominant. Or bob scales. Or just try to improvise. So it's a really good warm-up exercise. Then it gets into a little bit more stranger 2-5-1s in different cycles. I'm not gonna talk about all this stuff. You would have to find out for yourself. It even gets into the Coltrane changes. And then that goes through cycles. But here's a good one. This is kind of tricky. So first there's a 2-5 to E flat. F minor, B flat to E flat, but the sub 5 of E flat is E7, right? So you could switch the B flat for an E. They share the same guide tones. But you could also do this: F minor 7, B flat, B minor, E7, E flat. So there's a 2-5, the regular 2-5, and then the 2-5 a tritone away. It's actually not that unusual. It might seem strange, but it's kind of straightforward. Like, what's that tune? Tuxedo Junction, is that what it's called? D, G, E, A minor, A flat minor to D to C. So it's the tritone sub with its related minor chord. So if I want to improvise over that, I would need some phrases, and that's what I talked about in the previous lesson I did on the tune Milestones, Old Milestones. You need little cells. So if I have this progression, and I apply those cells, it could sound something like this. So if you want cells like that, you can check out the video I did, the previous video I did on Old Milestones, or a video I did way back on Moment's Notice, where I share some of those little cells. So again, you can do that even if it's not on the page, even if the other musicians are not doing that. If you do that, it can sound cool. Like, let's say I play Autumn Leaves. C, F, B minor, E to E flat, right? I'm gonna loop myself playing the regular chords, F, so I was treating that chord like that, even though the chords I'm playing are not the same. And it doesn't clash. It clashes a little bit, I guess, but as long as you resolve it. Another thing that could happen is instead of 2, 5, 1, you can get this A flat, D flat to E flat major 7, right? So it's the 4 minor to the flat 7, 7. I've heard people call this the backdoor dominant. It doesn't really have a dominant function, though. It has more of a subdominant quality to it, in my opinion. So we could have this next example gives me both of those examples I just showed you, so I'll show you what it sounds like.
1, 2.
So it's F minor 7,
4.
and then B. So it doesn't sound that out. And then A flat minor. And then the new key. Key. major. Just playing through these, or even if you're a more of an advanced player, just playing through this, it's a really good workout. It keeps you on your toes. Then there are some examples of tunes where he applies that. There's even a blues with the Coltrane changes and the rhythm changes, stuff like that. But it's a cool version of All the Things You Are. He calls it Some of the Things I Am, where he changes a lot of the chords with stuff I just showed you.
1, 2.
So F minor,
2, 3, 4.
B flat, and here's this sub 5. And so again, this is not very, it's not very out or strange. It's kind of like Wes Montgomery would do this all the time. It's pretty straightforward. So I think we kind of tend to dismiss Aebersold these days because they feel outdated. But I think that's a mistake. We can learn a lot from these. They're still very useful. So I've been playing along with this lately, and especially the 2-5-1 progression which is a little bit more material in this. So I guess it's more expensive. It's a lot, many more pages, and but they're really good. And then there's another one called Dominant Cycles, Dominant 7th Workout that I'm gonna order, and because I remember that one being really good. And yeah, so Aebersold probably sold a whole bunch of these back in the day, and now everything, if you can go and download everything on the torrent, don't do that. And there's this, I recently saw a video on Facebook somebody shared where Jamie Aebersold himself was donating instruments to a music school in, I guess, a local music school where he's from Kentucky, I think. I think he's running a jazz master's program called the Aebersold in his name. And he was donating all these instruments to kids, and it was a really nice thing to see. And he says that, well, I got some money, so why not? So he's probably made quite a decent amount of money from these.
I can do it, so if I don't do it, I'm not doing what I need to do. If the need is there and I got the money, I'm a musician, I can't take the money with me when I die, so let's get some instruments. Thank you, Mr. Aebersold. Yeah, look at that, that's good.
And there's so many of them. There's so many Aebersolds. But instead of downloading all of them from a torrent, which a friend of mine did and then never used them, it's better to get a few and actual copies and work with them. So that was my review of jazz turnarounds, cycles, and 2/5s. And as always, thank you for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.